That's why I have that rule.
Forgot about that.
Where do I need to clip this?
Wherever you want.
Okay. Can I clip it right here? Is that weird? I don't know. Is it weird? I'm gonna put it here-ish. Is that okay? We good? It doesn't make me look weird, does it? Okay. All right, so I'll just explain a little bit about me and Rachel. This is our baby in the middle. His name's Macon. And we have been doing anti-trafficking work for over 3 years now. We got married October 2021, and we became missionaries doing this in December 2021, and then 2 months after that we moved. So all the things they tell you not to do in your first year of marriage, we did it, and we're still here. I don't recommend it, but God has obviously kept us together in all of it. It was very stressful. So we've been doing it almost over 3 years, working on our 4th year now. And the main way that we fight trafficking is we help law enforcement and families find their missing and runaway children. So we work heavily with runaways, and I don't put that label on them. I'm just saying that so that you can understand what it is. I think there's an issue with labeling a kid as a runaway, but just so you can understand, because I feel like society, when you put that label on them, it puts a choice on them, that they made a choice. As we're going to go through today, I'm going to explain to you that sometimes they don't make the choice. They've been manipulated. So we'll go through that. In over 3 years, we've been able to make an impact on and help rescue over 250 missing and exploited children. We have gotten, I've done work in Vegas, Las Vegas. I go to Las Vegas multiple times a year. Unfortunately, I don't enjoy it. But we work during the Super Bowl. We work during the F1 Grand Prix, if anybody watches that stuff. I know down here it's more like NASCAR, but the F1 Grand Prix is the fancy cars or whatever. I'm not a race guy, so I don't know. But, and we don't get to ever see the events we work at. But we've worked in Detroit, Chicago, Newark, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Orlando. We've been in Birmingham. We work in Pensacola regularly. So we have been all over the place. We go to the worst neighborhoods. We go to the worst areas where you wouldn't want to go to, because that's where these kids are. So that's what we do. And then obviously the second part of how we fight trafficking, ta-da, is this, right? So the Lord laid on my heart about, I want to say, a year and a half ago, after we had been in it over 2 years, that believers, just believers in general, just don't really understand what trafficking is, don't really understand the issues that deal with it, because a lot of people learn about it on Facebook or from a movie. And a lot of that is not true. And just so you know, as I'm going through this is completely conversational. We have to, obviously there's a lot of material we have to get through, and I want to get you out here in a timely manner, hopefully early. Well, it should be early. But I want you to know that if you have a question, ask it. Whatever you're at. So just ask a question, we can talk through it, because I don't know what you're thinking. So if you're thinking, I'd like to know more about this, and I don't hit on it, I would hate for you to go home still questioning that, right? So by all means, I'm going to have some conversational parts, but you can stop me at any point. But we do internet safety, and we do human trafficking trainings to train believers, because we believe there's a verse, Matthew, I think it's, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I've been traveling a lot. Matthew 10:16 says that you should be wise as serpents, as you're going out amongst the wolves. And we believe that we know all of this, we can come into churches and help you be wiser, so that you can keep your kids safe, your community safe, this church safer, so that you can see stuff and be like, that's weird, and all that jazz. So here's the thing. So people wonder how the world could have gotten so bad when it comes to trafficking, when it comes to kids being exploited, when it comes to kids being groomed on the internet and all this stuff, pornography and all that jazz. They wonder how could it be so bad. And in our opinion, in our team's opinion, it all started with somebody telling you that something was okay. Right? Telling somebody that something was okay, and being that person that they were telling that wasn't fully educated on the subject, they just believed them. And they just continue to do it, right? And it just continues a cycle, which is why we are doing this today. If you know the truth, nobody can tell you that it's wrong, right? And that goes for Scripture as well. I mean, I love Scripture. I know y'all love Scripture. This church loves Scripture. If you know it yourself, nobody can come in and say, hey, that's wrong, because you know it. So we're going to go through this. So why our kids? Why are we talking about, in some of these slides, just so you know, between the two are kind of similar. When we do the human trafficking one, you'll see a slide like this, but different statistics. So why are we talking about our kids? In the United States, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 2,300 kids go missing every single day. That's over 830,000 kids a year go missing for various reasons. Now, I'm going to break it down for you because some people will come in here and they will give you that stat and they'll be like, 2,300 kids trafficked every day. Obviously, that's not the case. About a third of this, so about 800 kids a day, are runaways, which ties into my statistic under that, which is 1 out of every 6 runaways comes into contact with exploitation or trafficking within 48 hours. Why would that be a thing? So the average age of a child being introduced to trafficking in the United States is 12 to 14 years old. So what is something, 12 to 14, 15 years old, what's something that they can't do yet, right? Or something they don't have. They don't have a car. They can't drive. So they run away and they're on the streets. And the reason that statistic is like that is because once you get to that 2-day mark, eventually you're either going to be hungry, you're going to be tired, you're going to be wanting somewhere to sleep, and then somebody, no matter if you know them or not, is going to say, hey, come crash on my couch. And then unfortunately, that's how these kids that we deal with get caught up into situations they can't get themselves out of. And that's why we're here to help. According to statistics, when they polled a group of parents, 75% of the parents polled believed that their kids had never viewed porn, and then they did a reverse and they interviewed the kids, and 53% of the kids said that they had, which inevitably means that some of the parents that thought their kids hadn't, they had. And the thing is that kids are easy targets for predators if no one is willing to stand in the way. So as parents and grandparents, you're here today. That means that you are willing to stand in the way, right? And I know that we're believers and we have to be righteous and we have to be spiritual. But I know sometimes when it comes to these kids, y'all are wanting to bop somebody over the head. We can be honest, right? Doing this work, when I see a trafficker, when I'm talking to one, or when I'm talking to a woman who has exploited somebody or whatever, there are times when I'm like, I could just slide my credentials across the table and just go to jail right now. But the thing is that if I do that, I will never be able to help another one. Because there's always, unfortunately, another one. When it comes to the spiritual side of why our kids is that the enemy wants them. The enemy wants to corrupt our kids. The enemy wants to kind of, start the next generation off on a limp. He always wants to do that. But the thing is, and the reason we're here today is he can't have them because we're as parents and grandparents and as just general believers, we are going to fight for them. Something that you'll see over at our table. So everything on the table is free except for the hats. The hats are $20. If you want to buy something, I'm not pushing that. I'm just saying, and because I don't have a sign, I came unprepared. And then there's 2 booklets that shows you examples of the booklets that we will pass out when we go into cities of missing kids. And it has the ones that have been found and stuff, so you can see that. That's an example. Please don't take those. I've had people take them. I was preaching at a church in the middle of Alabama, and I had a booklet back there that was missing kids from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and someone took it. And I'm like, why? I'm like, what are you going to do with that? But the theme you'll see back there is fighting for futures. So that's me and my wife's motto is that we are fighting for futures. A lot of these kids don't believe they have one. Unfortunately, if they are being trafficked, they don't believe they have one. And if they're like stuck in pornography and all this stuff, their future is going to be heavily swayed by whether they can get out of this or not. So let's go into it. We're going to get to the awkward stuff first. Is that okay? Is that all right? This is going to be awkward stuff, but y'all can ask questions. I'm not going to, it's not this, thing where you don't want to ask questions. If you have questions, ask questions, because I've done a lot of research on this stuff, but I don't put it all on slides because I don't want you to be here for like 8 hours, right? So I want to get it done as quickly as possible. So here's some statistics. Some of them may shock you, right? So a study done by addictionhelp.com, which does studies on all addictions, drugs, alcohol, pornography, of teens with access to internet in 2023, 93% of teen boys had been exposed to porn and 62% of teen girls. As of January 2024, there are approximately 4 million, with an M, porn sites on the internet. That makes up roughly about 12% of all of the internet. And then the United States, number one, you've probably heard that before, but the United States, because we have such easy access to internet, is the number one consumer of online pornography. And in 2016, 4.6 billion hours of pornography were viewed on just one of those websites, which when you do the math on that, if one person was going to do it, it would take them 525,000 years to watch that amount of pornography. And that's just one site. So we're going to get into why is it addictive? Because I feel like to certain generations, right? So to generations that were born that didn't grow up with internet, I grew up with internet. Internet's been in my life my whole life, right? I dealt with this stuff. The sad thing about it is the age, I didn't put this on there, but the age that kids are being introduced to pornography gets younger and younger every day. I was introduced to pornography by a friend when I was 7 years old. And if you are thinking in this room, you probably know a 7-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid, or you have one, or whatever it is. But why is it so addictive? What is it that's making it addictive? And this stuff is not general, but it's in a little bit of in-depth research on addiction, but this can go really for any addiction. But it's because they are getting a dopamine hit every time they watch these videos. Dopamine is the driving force behind most addictions, and it definitely is in pornography. See, these kids, especially teenagers, at that age, once they hit 13, 14, 15, they're getting to an area where their brain is still rapidly developing, and dopamine's a big part of that. And if they are addicted to pornography, eventually their brain will start to slowly slow down the production of dopamine. What does that do? That creates a very irritable kid, right? That creates a kid who never wants to do anything, never happy, depressed maybe, because dopamine controls things like happiness, controls things like, and I'm going to show you in the next slide everything that it controls, but it controls those things. So if their brain starts to slowly stop producing it, and eventually it will get to a point where it completely halts production of dopamine, as a teenager whose brain is still developing, I mean, guys, males, their frontal lobe doesn't fully develop till 25 years old, right? So if their dopamine's shutting down at 15, we've got an issue. We've got an issue that can be reversed, but at the same time, it's something that is going to take a lot of time to reverse if their brain does do that. Because dopamine is just something that your body needs. If you are going to be happy, if you are going to survive, if you are going to be a person that can be around other people without hitting them or slapping them, you've got to have some dopamine in your body and some Jesus, right? You got to have some Jesus. I know I'm going more into like the science stuff, but you got to have some Jesus and some dopamine in there, And so it takes a lot of when it comes to this, when they get addicted to this good feeling, eventually the kid associates that good feeling with one thing, and that one thing is pornography or whatever it is that they're addicted to. I've met kids that are addicted to drugs, met kids that are addicted to alcohol. I mean, it's especially out in Las Vegas. There's thousands of teenagers that are on the streets in Las Vegas, and typically every one of them is drinking every night or doing drugs or whatever it is. So we've got to get this under control. What does dopamine affect? Dopamine affects pleasure and happiness, learning and attention, movement, mood, memory, sleep, pain response, heart rate, kidney function, and even your blood vessels. You have to have dopamine for all of that to work like it's supposed to. And your body is supposed to be what is producing it, right? But if you notice, and because I see some people writing, I won't go to the next slide yet, but if you notice, this means that dopamine affects the whole body. And that if your child is addicted to pornography and their body ceases to produce dopamine, it is an attack against their body, their whole body. And they're going to show it in different ways. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is hopefully you can start to pick up on those things. You can start to pick up on, okay, my kid's been acting weird. Is it a teenage hormonal thing, or is something going on, right? So the thing that I explain to people, and this will go, you'll hear me repeat it today because I have to repeat it. When I do this training, when I do the human trafficking training, when I go into signs or symptoms of someone who's being exploited or someone who is watching pornography, when I go into those things, for you to have a full thought on this, you have to have multiple signs coming together. Because one of the signs is going to be depression. But there's a lot of people who are depressed. That does not mean that they're watching pornography. But if they're depressed and they have one of these other signs and then they have a third sign down here, okay, we're starting to connect something. And we're starting to get to a point where we can say something. So I'm not here to train you to be the person who's crying wolf. I'm training you to be a person who is confident in what they know, so that when it comes to trafficking or when it comes to pornography, you're not just seeing somebody walking down the street and immediately calling the cops. That's not what I'm here to train you to do. I don't want you to do that. Really, what I train people to do is, once you go through this, my phone number's back there on a prayer card, and I offer this to people. I just did this. I got a call last night, a family asking for help that had went through one of our trainings because their 12-year-old daughter had been talking with a 45-year-old man on Roblox. And they want me to try and find out who the guy is, because it's just a screen name, of course. So that is something that, and I say this to say, don't abuse it because I'm busy. But once you've gone through this training, I want to be a resource for you. And I want to be a resource for your church. I've had, a week and a half ago, I had a parent reach out to me saying her daughter, and I'll go into this, how she reached out to this male, and it was on a school computer. But she wanted me to run a phone number. So like when we're doing missing kids stuff, we have software where I can put a person's phone number in. I can put their address in. I can put their license plate in. And it'll tell me everything I want to know, as long as it's not a burner phone. If it's a burner phone, then I can't tell, right? So she wanted me to run a phone number, and that was just a one-off thing. So like once you leave here, make sure you take my prayer card. And if your kid is doing something weird and you're like, I remember Christian saying this, but I don't really know, call me, text me, email me, whatever. I can help walk you through it. Does that make sense? So and if you're like, my kid's texting this random number, I don't know who it is, and you want to send it to me and get it run to make sure that it's, well, not to make sure that it's safe, but just to see who it is, by all means, I am here to do that. So it affects the entire body, it affects social life, it affects family, and it affects happiness. So when you see a kid that is addicted to pornography, they will most times sequester themselves away from family. They will begin to, your kid that was all about family, all about hanging out, first one to be there at Thanksgiving, sitting around everybody. Now it's all of a sudden, they're just gone all the time in another room, or they're, doing whatever it is. They're a little more distanced from family. But you see, the reason that they're distanced from family isn't necessarily what they would think it is, because they're wanting to watch pornography, but it's because they feel shame. It's because they feel shame about the fact that they want to watch pornography. But they can't fight it, which is why we have to help them fight it. And I'm going to go into the psychology of what it looks like, and we'll get through it. So it affects basically everything for them. It especially affects their social life. When I was coming up with this, I talked with a bunch of friends who went through the same testimony that I had, who had been addicted to pornography in middle school and high school. And a thing that is a reoccurring in all of the stories is that, for instance, if your kid is super involved, say on Wednesday nights, or your kid serves in children's church or whatever, if they have given in to a temptation to watch pornography before, like on Tuesday or Wednesday before church or whatever, they will not be as social when they are here, because they will feel, like I said, that shame. They will sequester themselves back there. They will not talk to the people they will normally talk to, and they will begin to pull back because they feel like they're not as good as everyone else. But they don't understand that everybody has their problems, or not their problem, but everybody has their own problems. So these are mental health conditions that one of two things: a pornography addiction can make these worse, or a pornography addiction can start these. So it's literally pretty much any mental health condition you can think of. I don't have to necessarily go through all of them, but anxiety, depression, if this is their outlet, if pornography is their outlet to get out of the anxiety, to get out of the depression, it's going to make it worse, 100%. It's going to make anything that they are already dealing with worse, because it's an addictive behavior. Especially if your kids say they're addicted to, a vape or something like that. Say they're addicted to things like that, because they will be giving in so much to the addictive behavior that pornography causes. It'll make those things worse because their willpower is breaking down, if that makes any sense. So here's the thing we have to understand as parents, is that there are two things. When your kid is addicted to pornography, there are two things that you have to kill when you are killing this. When you are fighting this battle, fighting this evil, there are two things. You have to kill desire and you have to kill habit. And they are two different things. You can't kill just one. You can't just fight one and not fight the other. Because if you do not kill the desire to do it, how do you kill the desire to do it? Right? You get them more involved with Jesus and the Bible, right? Because society doesn't have a problem with it. So you get them more involved in church, you get them more involved in the gospel and knowing the Bible and stuff. That's how you kill that desire. But if you kill the desire and you don't do anything about the habit will kickstart the desire again, and vice versa. Right? So the habit is going to be probably the hardest thing to kill here. But you've got to get both of them. Otherwise, it's not going to work. A lot of parents think that it's a one thing, and it's not. Yes, ma'am. Fight both desire or habit, so that's an interesting question and an unfortunate one. But so really what it would come down to is you have to, it would be good if, say, you had parents like this in your life that are not wanting to fight that, it would be good for them to be here, right? But or they're videoing this, it would be good for them to listen to this. But the parents would have to know that this is a detriment to your child. Now, here's the thing, is I can train people all day, every day, 24/7, but if they don't accept it, then it doesn't matter what I say. Because everybody has different cultures. But I would say, first off, for sure, there's a website I'm going to recommend at the end. And when I hand y'all out, I've got a piece of paper with important things to remember that I'm going to hand out at the end. I would recommend them checking out one of those websites. It's called parent.thorns.org or parent.thorn. I don't remember if it has an S on it or not, but I'll give you the right one before the end of this. But it's so Thorn.org is a nonprofit organization that has lots of teaching for parents. They can go and they can watch videos on, okay, my kid's on TikTok or my kid's on Twitter or X or whatever it is, right? And they can go and they can watch this video and it will teach them exactly how that social media works and how you can talk to your kid about it. For parents that it's more awkward to do that, teaches them. But I would say I would say, in something I recommend, because I am a pastor, right, is that you just got to plead the blood over them. The parents, they're like, hey, Lord, open their eyes. Because if they don't open their eyes and they think that, oh, this is just something that every teenage boy goes through, which is what society thinks, then they will just not care. So I would, and then anytime that you might have alone with said child, be pouring into them and be like, be honest with them. If there's a relationship there where you can be honest, I highly recommend stop beating around the bush. Just get right to it. Let's just get right to it. What are you doing on your phone? What are you doing on your computer? Because if the parents aren't going to do it, somebody's got to. So that's just, does that help at all? So that would be a very hard situation. But yeah. So here's the psychology of it. This is the psychology of what it takes to form a habit, right? So when you are forming a habit, you have 4 different steps. You have the cue, you have the craving, you have the response, and the reward. Right? So a lot of times, and this is getting a little bit off of what I'm talking about, when you're trying to create a habit of getting in the gym every day, right? And you are trying to do this and you set specifically, you're like, I'm going to go to the gym every day, specifically at 8 a.m., and I'm going to be there. And so that would be your cue. Your cue would be 8 a.m. to go to the gym. And then nobody really craves to go to the gym other than to be healthier. But to be healthier, I guess, would be your craving. And then you would respond by going to the gym. And then your reward would be a healthier body. Right? But a lot of times people fail with that because they're too specific in it. Because they put that cue at 8 a.m. and then you oversleep and it's 8:15. It's like, oh, I missed it. And then that's why it's hard to form a habit that way. But this is how the habit starts. So most kids, when it comes to pornography addiction, where does the habit start? Like, right, when I was 7, it was introduced to me involuntarily. I didn't look it up. Somebody showed it to me. But if, nowadays, right, it's kids sending it to each other. It's seeing it on Instagram. It's seeing it on X or Twitter. It's seeing it on Reddit or Facebook. You can pretty much get to pornography on just about any social media website nowadays, especially if they are a kid. It will target them and it will show them things that they shouldn't see. But what it'll happen is in that scrolling, right? They're scrolling. They're seeing women that are dressed in bikinis or whatever, or scantily dressed, scrolling. And as soon as for a male particularly, it also goes for females, but for a male particularly, they scroll, they see a girl dressed in a bikini, immediately that cue's there. And it starts the craving. And when the craving starts, for a teenager, it will get harder and harder and harder and harder to fight the longer they don't give into it. So what happens with that? I'll tell you in the next slide a little bit about it, but think about, before I get to the next slide, what happens with a child if this craving just continues to go on and they don't give into it for a day, 2 days, couple hours, whatever it is. But then once they give into that craving, they will respond. They will watch the pornography or whatever, and then they get that reward of dopamine. And they get that reward of dopamine, and like I said, that dopamine starts to not happen in their body, which is not good. So how are you going to catch it? Within that structure, how are you going to catch it? So the most easy areas for you to catch in that cycle of cue, craving, response, reward, the most easy areas is for you to catch it in the craving and the reward. Because when it comes to pornography addiction, so I've given you time to think, if they see that cue on Instagram and they're at school or they're at wherever and they can't access that at the moment, the longer the craving goes on, what's going to happen? They're going to get extremely irritable, right? If you've known anybody that has, that smokes cigarettes or, does whatever with nicotine, right? When I was in school, right, you could tell when somebody needed nicotine. Or you could tell when somebody needed, when I was in college, Adderall. They were taking Adderall, and I'd get offered Adderall at the library. They were like, it'll help you study. And I'm like, no, thanks. and stuff like that. But like you could tell, right, if you've ever known anybody in addiction to drugs or something like that, you tell when they start fidgeting and all that stuff, it's time. They need a hit of whatever it is that they need a hit of, right? But in the craving, when it comes to a male and females, when it's pornography addiction, when the longer they crave it and the longer they don't give into it, they will become extremely irritable and they will become borderline violent sometimes. And they will cuss you out. They will cuss their teacher out. They'll cuss whoever. It doesn't matter. Whoever's in front of them, they can get it, right? That's what happens. And then you can catch it in the reward phase. After they have watched it, they are going to feel shame. And if they've done it in their room or if they're in the bathroom or wherever they are, they feel shame. And then they are going to try and reinsert themselves into the family. So wherever your family hangs out, the living room, backyard, or whatever, soon as they've given into that and they feel shame about it, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm such a terrible person. And they are going to try and reinsert themselves into whatever it is that your family's doing at the time. They're going to be gone, and then all of a sudden they're going to show up, but they're not going to be super talkative because they feel shame. Does that make any sense? Is that like clear as mud, or, So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for these inconsistencies. You know your kids. You know your grandkids. When we're looking for missing kids, we have a thing that when we're going into hotels or we're going into bad neighborhoods or whatever it is, we sit there for a minute and we see what we call the pattern of life. What is going on in this parking lot? What is happening? What are people doing? Are there a lot of homeless people? Are there a lot of this going on? And how can I blend in best is how we talk about it. How can I blend into this pattern of life? Because as soon as I step out in some particular neighborhoods, like I stick out immediately, right? So we have to figure out how do we blend in. So you know the pattern of life for your child. You know what it has been up to this point, that maybe unfortunately they've been introduced to online pornography. And you know what it is now, and you can start to look for, okay, I know they're 13 or 14 years old and they got hormones going on, but is this anger that isn't all the time? It builds seemingly. Why is it building like that? Why is it like a simmering pot where they just all of a sudden they bite your head off, right? Or the reward, like I said, where they feel shame and they try to reintroduce themselves into the family life, and they're quiet and they're like, they're just overly loving in a sense. And then once they get that cue again, they remove themselves again to go and get that hit. So those are the things that you can be looking for. Common symptoms. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. So if you want to take a picture or whatever, but common symptoms of pornography addiction. This can go for a lot of addictions. Some of them can. But unable to control urges or cravings. How would you know that unless you know the kid, right? So you got to know the kid. You got to spend time with the kid. If it's your grandkid, your niece, your nephew, whoever, you have to know a kid pretty well to know if they're not able to control urges or cravings. They have a sexual obsession. They bring up sex in conversations randomly and inappropriate times. They especially bring up sexual jokes or whatever it is, inappropriate jokes around younger children. They will do it a lot if they're addicted to this stuff, right? So, because, right, what does the Bible says? Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart, for everything you do comes out of it, right? So it's the same thing. If pornography is going into their heart, jokes like that are going to come out. They're going to come out because it's normal to them. And they're going to say it around kids and younger kids to see their reaction. Sexual dysfunction at a young age. Obviously, no young kids should be having issues like that. No young kids should be sexually active anyway. But, so like if the doctor's talking about stuff like that. Unable to control intrusive thoughts. If they come to you and they're like, I have these thoughts and I can't control them and stuff like that. Pornography addiction will either start that or make that worse. Constant feelings of shame or guilt. They will feel shame and they will feel guilty after the fact every time. But it'll only last until that next cue. So that they will feel shame and guilt until that next cue. And then they're right back in the cycle. And then they're going to feel shame and guilt again a day later or whatever it is. Whatever their cycle is, timing-wise. And they will have random, risky behaviors. If If you have a kid that has always been a rule follower, or a kid that has never snuck out or whatever, and all of a sudden they're starting to do random risky behaviors, it is most likely a sign that their body has began slowing down dopamine, because they are looking for excitement. And whether that's excitement, you getting onto them, or the excitement of sneaking out of the house, or the excitement of sneaking something into the house, whatever it is, that is a sign that the dopamine has slowed down. And they are trying to get it in other ways. So common signs: increased isolation and seclusion. I've already hit that pretty heavy. They will want to be alone a lot. Irritability surrounding their phone or device. They will get extremely irritated, like say you try to take it, say you try to check it or whatever, or you even just ask them, what are you doing on your phone? You know? And they're immediately all over you. You know, something like that, that's something to look for. And like I said, we have to have multiple of these. I know kids sometimes can just be irritable for no reason, just because they're kids. So we have to have multiple of these signs coming together. Extreme mood swings. Right? And so especially with no history of that. If they have never had a history of being like that, if they all of a sudden, they have, like I've been talking about, the extreme mood swings of irritability to shame and guilt, and then back and forth and back and forth and all this stuff, it can be a sign of this. Hides device, seeks alone time with the device, deletes search history regularly. Does anybody in here check your kids' search histories? Right? A couple? So I'll explain real quickly that for most devices, something that you can do instead of just checking search history, how can we figure out if our kid's deleting search history, right? So on most devices, you have options. When you're going to delete search history, you can delete an hour, you can delete 24 hours, you can delete a week, a month, and then all of it. So if you go on your kid's device and they have deleted all of it, and you see no search history ever, obviously, that's pretty obvious. But most kids are smart, especially nowadays. So typically, if they do the deleting an hour, that's going to be hard to catch, really hard to catch. But if you know they had a device on today, right? You know they had a device today on Saturday, and you know they're normally looking stuff up and trying to buy stuff on Amazon, all this stuff, right? If you know that they're doing that and you look back and there is a day missing, 24 hours, okay, let's talk about something. Because I know you had your device. And I know you like to be looking up all these videos and all this stuff, and you had your device and you weren't doing anything. Like, okay, there's something to talk about. So I look for that, 24 hours. That's the one, because that's the one that it recommends typically. So that's the easiest one. Androids, I believe, sometimes will recommend the hour, but most times, most devices recommend 24 hours. Has multiple passcodes on the device. We will get into that. There are certain apps that they can use to hide things from you. But if they have multiple passcodes, I know you might know the passcode to get into their phone, but if they have a passcode to get into, say, their photos or into anything else, obviously, I know that's an easy one. That'd be like, what are you hiding from me, kid? You know, I pay for your phone. So any questions on that? We're through that. I'll go into some apps and stuff at the end, but yes, ma'am. So in my mind, you already know he's impulsive about things, right? So I would go back and I would look for some of these other signs of different things, like, the irritability around the phone, or the wanting to be alone with the phone, or stuff like that. Like I had a parent that came into the training that said they take their kid's phone at night, at like 8 o'clock or whatever, give it back in the morning, I guess. And they said that their kid would randomly, every now and then, at 10, 11 p.m. be like, I'm not tired, can I please get back on my phone? And sometimes they would give in to that. Turns out the kid was watching pornography. You know the baseline. You know that he's impulsive. So look for the inconsistencies. What are the things that you know what he does, and he's doing some weird things? But I would recommend, if you have any suspicion, using a device monitoring software, like an app. Here's the thing when it comes to this stuff is, at some point there has to be an open and honest line of communication. And some parents, you'd be surprised. Some parents, when I go to churches, they're like, well, that's awkward. I don't want to talk to my kid about that, or stuff like that. But at some point, depending on age, you have to have that conversation, and you have to have that honest and open conversation with your child. Like, hey, listen, sit with your child and be like, look, there's these things on the internet that are dangerous to you. And you can be honest with them. Be like, I have a sneaky suspicion that you might be doing these things. Whether they're doing it or not, it'll automatically be, no, I'm not, no, all this stuff. They'll start vomiting all kinds of words. But the thing you can look for when you have that conversation, right? So we're trained when we're out in the streets and I'm talking to a drug dealer, I'm talking to a homeless person, whatever it is, we're trained in how to pull out information. So when you're having that conversation, look for him trying to redirect you somewhere else. If he is hardcore trying to redirect you to something else, to, how many kids do you have?
2 boys.
So if he's trying to redirect you to your other son, or if he's trying to redirect you to my friend does this or that, break that redirection, bring him back in. And if he continues to try and redirect you, he tries to do new things, or he gets irritated about you trying to redirect him, he's hiding something. That's what we're trained to do. So it's the common way to irritate somebody. If they're trying to redirect you and you don't let them, people get uncomfortable and they get irritated, and then that's a sign of something. So at least in people's behavior. Yes, ma'am. When it comes to getting out of the pornography addiction and fighting that, especially for boys, girls are sometimes a little bit different, but especially for males, you have to replace that with something. That activity, whatever it is, you have to replace that with something, because if you don't, they're just sitting there, itching to do something, and then eventually it's going to be like, what do I got to do? And they're going to do whatever they have to do to get something. I don't care if it's a picture in a magazine. They're going to be tearing your house apart at some point trying to get it because of that craving. But you have to replace it with something healthy. So whether that's replacing it with something like, hey, join the worship team in the youth group, or play sports, or whatever it is, you have to replace that activity. And then the longer that they are off of it, the longer that we can keep them off of it and in a healthy lifestyle, it just takes time. It will start to come back. The body will start to come back, but it takes time. Just like, if somebody's addicted to drugs and they go through withdrawals and they feel like they're going to die and all this stuff, they have to be off of drugs a certain amount of time before their body starts to do those things again. And that's the hard part, time. You have to keep them off of it. You have to keep them and be doing something healthy. They're activating it more often, almost on a daily basis, right? When it comes to dopamine and these other chemicals in your brain that make you happy, naturally, it'll get activated throughout the day, but it'll get activated from like having a meaningful conversation or making a good grade on a test, stuff like that. But they've now replaced all that where they make a good grade on a test, they don't care. None of that stuff affects them because the dopamine that they get from pornography is so heavy. And so they've replaced all those things where those things don't mean anything. So you replace it with a healthy activity, whether sports, some extracurricular thing, whatever it is that you can get, whatever they can get interested in, get them in it and support them in doing it. If you can replace that activity, over time, their brain will begin and their body will begin to be like, okay, we're back to normal, we're back to a baseline. Let's start producing these things again. And then sometimes, when it comes to actual drug addiction, right, when it comes to your body not producing these things, a teenager is going to bounce back quick. If you're an adult, 30, 40, 50 years old or whatever, and you're addicted to drugs, your body will bounce back a lot slower. So sometimes, doctors and stuff will be like, you need to take a certain thing to help your body come back to that. But we don't always jump to that, right? You want your body to do what your body's going to do. And I believe Jesus, the Holy Spirit, can heal it completely. So I always recommend that first versus drugging up, a kid. So, with all that stuff. Any more questions on that before I go into predator behavior? All right. So predator behavior. What does a predator act like when they are zeroing in on a child that they are interested in? Let's go into it. So before we go into it, you got to understand this. This is the reason that I do this. Most parents don't understand what the danger is. From 2020 to 2022, a year and a half, 2.5 years, because it's August, time frame, 83% of exploiters and traffickers who had trafficked or exploited a child, 83% were somebody that the family knew. It was, as you can see here, 44% were familial, meaning they were a family member, related. And I've been doing this almost 4 years. I've seen it all. I've seen grandparent, both sides. I've seen cousin. I've seen mom, dad, seen uncle, all of it. I've seen every family member. But the purpose of me going through this is I'm not trying to make you scared of everybody, right? Like what I said at the beginning, I'm wanting to make you confident in what you know. But this is not trying to scare you. I'm just telling you real world stats here. So, and this comes from Polaris Project, which does the statistics from the National Hotline and the FBI and all that stuff. And then 39% were intimate partners of the victim or intimate partners of the parent, whatever it is. So that adds up to 83% were people that the parents knew. It wasn't a white van driving down your neighborhood. It wasn't some random person, you know, all this stuff. But it was most times it is somebody that you know. And then that, so you gotta scale back here and think, okay, what am I thinking here? Because I don't want to, you know, if you've got that weird uncle in the family, you know, everybody's got a weird uncle. You know, it's like, I don't want to just automatically be like, oh, he's going to, you know, exploit my kids or something like that. You don't ever want to throw that on somebody without having a full thought about it, right? So we'll go through the things. But that's what I want you to know is, and technically, I mean, you could bump that up to 89% because most people know their employer. I mean, you know, so I mean, technically, some of the employer stuff goes into like people who are like coming across the border type stuff. So it's not necessarily that they know them. So that's why I don't add it. But so predator behavior. When a predator is interested in a target, so I'm going to refer to a child as target in this. I'm not going to say child or children or a name or whatever, just a target, because when a predator is going after somebody, they are targeting the child. So when a predator is interested in a target, they will memorize and mimic the behavior of the child. Does that make any sense? So what they're going to do, and I'm going to try and not jump ahead of myself, is they are going to zero in on a behavior of the child, typically the thing that is most important to the child, and then they are going to somehow reveal to the child that, hey, I'm interested in that too. And they're going to learn all they can about it, and they're going to start to mimic these things. If your kid loves, and this is just an example, if your kid loves Super Mario, they're going to start showing up decked out Super Mario shirts and giving them Super Mario stuff like that, right? Because they are zeroing in on what they think is most important to the child. The more they mimic the target's behavior, the more the target will become comfortable with the predator. That's why they do it. They're mimicking behavior. Just like when I'm talking to somebody, when I'm interviewing someone with the missing kids stuff, if I'm talking to you one-on-one and you're doing these things, you're scratching your nose, you're scratching your arm, all this stuff, and I start to mirror you, I'm watching your behavior and you go to scratch your nose and I do it too and all that stuff, I am subconsciously, I am putting in behaviors that you may not notice in the conversation, but it is getting you to trust me. Because I'm doing what you're doing, right? And that's getting down into the weeds of what we get trained to do. That's not what I'm here to do. But if I start mirroring you, you're going to trust me more. Unless you're trained on this stuff, then you're going to be like, why is he mirroring me, right? So which most people aren't. So they will memorize and mimic whatever behaviors they believe are most important to the target. It's that simple. They are going to memorize whatever, if you think about your kids and your grandkids, what is the one thing that is most important to them? Whatever that is, if a predator is taking interest in them, that's what they're going to mimic. That's what they're going to take interest in. Just having that on your mind, like my kid really loves, unicorns, or my kid really loves, baseball or whatever it is. And this random adult, or this adult that we may know, comes into the frame, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's talk about baseball. Let me take your kid to a baseball game, all this stuff, right? So it's just, you have to, like I said before, you have to have that pattern of life. And you have to realize that anybody who's coming into your line, say your life is going this way, your family's right behind you, anybody that comes into your line is breaking that pattern of life. And doesn't matter if they're related or not. And you have to have these things in your mind so that you are reading the situation and you're like, okay, this is weird. I'm looking into this. And every parent has that sense anyway. Your spidey sense or whatever. I call it discernment from the Holy Spirit, right? The discernment from the Holy Spirit, that's the number one thing. If you don't remember anything else today, the best thing you can have as a parent is discernment. When it comes to pornography addiction or any of this, the Lord's going to reveal to you stuff is going to happen way faster than you're going to pick up on it, just because we're all busy, right? So pray for discernment. Pray for discernment. Lord, reveal things. I will never forget, I was 12 or 13, and I was in my room doing that stuff, the pornography addiction. And my mom comes busting up in the room, and she says, it's not a, hey, how you doing? It's not a anything like that. Immediate anger on her face. And she was like, what are you doing? I had not given I was in my room, door closed, all that stuff. I had not given any signs that I was doing anything. She comes in the room and she immediately knew exactly what I was doing. There was no lying. How? I have no idea other than the Holy Spirit, right? So that stuff will happen. And the Holy Spirit will be your greatest tool in this stuff. So after learning the behaviors of the target, the predator will gain trust through gifts or meaningful conversation. Like I said, if they like Super Mario, they will begin to show up Super Mario shirt. And oh my goodness, I just so happen to have this Yoshi plushie. Here you go. Or what are the stuffed animal things that kids really love nowadays? The squishy ones, the real squishy. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Squishmallows? Yeah, my niece loves those. She's got like 50 of them. And I'm like, how many do you need? So they will start to show up with gifts, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, this uncle or this cousin or whoever who has never taken interest in my kid, all of a sudden they're just giving all these gifts. Or, especially if it's a random person. If your kid is showing up, and this goes into more of the human trafficking, but if your kid is showing up at home with things that you did not pay for, yet they don't want to tell you where it came from, red flag. Doesn't matter if it's for predator or trafficking, whatever it is. Red flag immediately. Nobody should be giving your kid completely free. Like, I know when they come to kids' church, it's like, do y'all do like the tickets things and they get like, or whatever? Our kids' church does that. But either way, you get like gifts and stuff like that. Like, that's going to happen. Look for the stuff that, okay, this is random. They're showing up at home with these new shoes that are $200 or whatever, and you didn't pay for them. But like, oh, well, so-and-so did, and they're really nice, and I like them. Like, okay. They're nice, all right? Like it's time to have a conversation with that person and your kid. So once the predator has gained trust, they will begin to test boundaries, and the boundaries are not just boundaries with the kid. The boundaries they're going to be testing them is with you. So the number one thing that throws a predator off the scent of a kid, what is it? Parent. But specifically, statistically, and I don't have this stat on here, but statistically, the number one thing that's going to throw a child predator off of your kid is a dad or a male presence being present, especially a capable one. Somebody who's, strong or whatever, or knows what he's doing, or like carries, or whatever it is that you do. If a male is present, your kid is way less likely to have somebody throw interest on them. But, if you're a single parent in the room, that doesn't mean that you're just a target or whatever, but they are going to be looking at you if there's no male present. So, as a mom, we need to learn these things. So, so they're going to start testing your boundaries. Like I said, they're going to be like, if they're at baseball, or if they're at whatever it is they do, dance or something, some random person or whoever is going to offer to give them a ride home. Your answer to that is them testing a boundary. With the kid, say the kid's there and they're around the kid a lot, eventually what they're going to do to start testing boundaries of the kid is going to look like something that you will never notice because it's super subliminal, but they're just going to be up to your kid and they're just going to put their hand on their shoulder. Okay, does the kid let me put their hand on my shoulder? Yes, check. That passed first boundary, right? Then they're going to send a text to the kid. Does the kid reply? Yes. Second boundary, passed, right? So they're looking for those things. So it's small stuff. Small stuff. They'll be talking to you. They'll see if you're going to give up information, and I'm not talking about I know we all talk about our kids and stuff, but super specific information. Trying to think of a good example, but like specific school grades or stuff like that, they're going to become interested in those things. And they're going to see if you are giving that information. And they're going to see how much you care about your kid. And if they deem that and I know everybody cares about their kid, but if the predator deems that for some reason in their mind that you don't, or that you have a slightly less caring about your kid than anyone else or whatever, they're going to zero in every time. So, just be wary of who you're talking to. Be wary of people doing weird random things of just touching your kid's arm, brushing your kid's arm, whatever. Stuff that would seem normal, but because of who the person is, it is not normal. Is that making sense? Yes. Right. So with a family member, right, the testing of boundaries will be different. Testing of boundaries, well, they already know your kid, right? So the testing of boundaries will be they'll be the person to initiate say it's uncle. We'll just go off that example. But say it's an uncle and, one of their cousins stays there. Instead of the cousin coming up to you and being like, hey, can your kid stay, or can your daughter or whoever stay with me? It'll be the uncle that's initiating it. And they'll make out like the kids asked me if they could stay over. I mean, it'll be so normal. I'm being serious with y'all. It'll be so normal. But hey, it'll be them initiating it. And you say yes, and then it's like, okay, well, they'll let them stay over here. And then then their mind gets to going, right? And so I don't want to scare anybody, but it is such normal stuff that if you have and we're all busy, when it comes to your kids, slow down. When it comes to your kids, slow down. I'm not saying that you need to overanalyze everything. But if you have a daughter, when you are talking to an adult male that is not your husband, just take note of things. I'm a people watcher. I watch people all the time. I document people in my brain. When me and Rachel are sitting at restaurants, I will make a mention in conversation that this is happening over here, and I know, hey, they're in a fight over there, and I'm listening. I know exactly what's going on. Or this is going on over here, or this weird person just walked in, and I love it when they walk in. If you're a people watcher in the room, when you're in church or when you're in a restaurant or whatever, there's just those type people. As soon as they walk in the door, you're like, this is a good one right here. I'm watching them. Right? So even if you're not a people watcher, become one. Right? Become one. And just pay attention to behavior. But on the reverse side of that, like we talked about with the pornography addiction, have an open conversation with your child. No matter how old your child is, right? Teach your child, hey, this is your uncle, this is your aunt, your whoever. Don't let anyone kiss you on the face. Don't let, and if somebody tries to kiss you, you tell me immediately, right? Train that stuff into them. If somebody tries to kiss you, tell me immediately. If somebody touches you, tell me immediately. If somebody, shoulder, arm, whatever it is. If somebody who is not me or your dad touches you, kisses you, asks you this weird question, it needs to come to me every time. And the biggest thing with doing that is to train your kids that secrets are not okay. Because when we get into I think it might be the next slide, but one of the biggest boundaries, one of the biggest leaps for these predators is they are going to at some point try to figure out if your child will keep a secret for them. And if the child keeps the secret, then it's on. That's the biggest point. So if we are training our kids, I know we train them like, the Bible says not to lie and all that stuff, and that's great and all. But absolutely no secrets, no matter who it is. And I would even train a kid, I know my kid's 8 months, I'm not at that yet, but I would train a kid that if someone asks you to keep a secret, I don't care if it's the little kid that you hang out with in school. If somebody asks you to keep a secret, you come and you tell me immediately. And so that would be a big way to pick up on it, especially with family members. That would be the big one. Because with family members, they're trying to fly under the radar. They got to keep everything level. Because if they don't, they know that somebody in the family is going to pick it up. So family members especially are going to try and get your kid to keep a secret. So watch out for that and train that into your children. So they desire close contact with a child, even though they may not have before. They are all of a sudden desiring close contact with a child. They give the child special attention. Say you have 3 or 4 kids, 5 kids, whatever. Some people have like 10. You have a bunch of kids. If this adult is all of a sudden only giving attention to one of your kids, that's an issue, right? We got to talk about that. And I know every family dynamic is different. The family I grew up in was not, there was on both sides, dad, mom, both sides, we had manipulation. It was not good, right? Everybody has that. My grandma on my mom's side would get way better gifts for my cousins. So that happens, right? That happens in families. I get that. But if it's all of a sudden, then we need to take note of that, right? And really just take note of that in general. I mean, if somebody's making your kid feel lesser, it's time to go, right? But, that's just me. But I'm very blunt about that stuff. So creating emotional dependency, that comes in with the texting and the talking, and they'll be like, oh, well, if you don't talk to me today, I'll have the worst day ever. Or like, and this is on the next slide, but if you love me, you'll do this. If you care about me, you'll do this. All this stuff, right? So they start to create emotional dependency on both sides. They're going to somehow get your kid to trust them, and then your kid is going to be emotionally dependent on them. Now, how they do that is different from time to time, but it'll be like, oh, I failed a grade, or I failed a test, or failed a class, or whatever. They're going to immediately be messaging him like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, yada, yada, all this stuff. I wish I had been there to help you study and all this jazz. And eventually it becomes a point where they create emotional dependence on the predator. But the predator is also going to place emotional dependence on them and going to act like their life will be ruined if your kid does not message them. So using manipulative behavior and language. So I'll get in that in the next slide, but we all should know what manipulative, and I've kind of been going into that a little, but manipulative behavior and language and stuff that should just not be used with kids. They push physical and mental boundaries. Like I said, the touching of the shoulder, we'll get into on the next slide, but they'll try and get them to go to a pool, or they'll try and get them to go to a hot tub, so they get your kid in a bikini, or they get your kid in a swimsuit, or whatever it is, so that we're pushing those physical boundaries. We're trying to get closer and closer to what the predator really wants. And then they get jealous about the child. That's a big one. Family member, whoever it is. If you don't invite them to something, they get extremely jealous, because they want to be there where your kid is. Or if you show up to a party and you're like, oh, I got babysitters tonight, and they're like, oh man, so why didn't you bring your kid? And they're like super jealous about it, and they get like visibly angry or visibly irritated about it. That's a weird thing, because your kids belong to you. Kids don't belong to them, right? So tries to control parts of the child's life. You got to think small about that. They try to control their talents. They try to control their hobbies. That's why you see so many times coaches and dance people and teachers that are getting caught for having relationships with kids. It's because they are controlling very small parts of your child's life. So And then like this. So these are a little bit of the signs. Acts like the child is older than they actually are. In conversation, they will mention things that an adult should know not to mention around children. Talking. So if the guy's like 34, he's talking to the kid like they are also 34. You know, man, you're talking about taxes and like I'm about to lose my house and stuff like that. Like you don't talk about that stuff with kids. Like, you know, but like putting all of that on them. Talks inappropriately around child, especially if they are seeming to force it. If they say an inappropriate joke and their eyes immediately go to your kid to look for a reaction, that's a big red flag because they're doing it on purpose. So sneaks pictures of a child, that's an easy one. If you ever, and I know grandparents and everybody has pictures of your kids, but if you ever find photos of your child that are not just a regular, like, you know, smiling photo on someone else's phone, I mean, I know I don't have to teach that, right? We all know that. That's, you know, that's something to look for. Loses interest in conversation with you if child is not present or if it is not about the child. So they will lose interest in conversation quickly if the child's not there or if it is not about them. Overreacts to child being sad or getting hurt. If the child fails a test or gets sad or all this stuff, they will overreact to it, be very sad or angry or whatever it is. And then by doing that, they will try to insert themselves as a child's protector or safe place. They are going to try, and so like for all of your life, your relationship with your child is you, and your child stands right in front of you, right? They are going to try and put themselves in between you. They are going to try and put themselves as the protector or the safe place because, oh, mom doesn't understand you. Mom, you know, doesn't understand what we understand. Mom doesn't want you to have fun. Mom doesn't want you to do good in life. I do. I can buy you this stuff. I'm going to buy you this car, this purse, this shoes, all this stuff. Very, very manipulative, and it's what they do every single time. This bottom one, these can happen every now and then. This bottom one happens every single time. The person is going to insert themselves between you and your child. And if you are not hyper-focused on your child, you'll miss it. So examples are, like I said, keeping secrets, touching the child in harmless areas, asking questions like, do you love me? If you love me, questions. Tries to do something that requires bathing suits with the child. Love bombing. All of a sudden, they're like, I love you so much. You're awesome. You know, all this stuff and all that jazz. Love bombing someone. Extreme interest and excitement involving the child's talents or over any other child. And that comes into heavy play, like right when you have like the coaches and the gymnastic and all that stuff that you see in the news. They're going to take interest in your child's talent. Your child's the best child, and they're so honored to have them on their team and all this stuff, right? So that's just a couple of examples. I don't have time to necessarily go through this case example because I want to get done time to eat pizza. Is the pizza here? Okay. So I'm just going to go through this. I'm going to recommend this because I don't have time to go through it. But there is a show, and I don't remember what it is on, but I remember I watched it, that explains this very, very well. It is a show called Silent on Set. Have you all seen it? Anybody seen it? So being I don't have time to go through this, Silent on Set. That is what it's called, right? For the person that said you watched it?
I believe so.
Let me just check.
It sounds like the name of it.
I think it's, I want to say it's on HBO Max or something. Let me make sure so I'm not telling y'all right, or so I'm not telling y'all wrong. So, or is it called Quiet on Set? I think it's called Quiet on Set. Either way, Quiet on Set. It's a documentary about a lot of abuse that went on in the 90s in Nickelodeon. And there's an episode, it's either the 5th or 6th episode, and it goes heavy into a case that happened with Drake Bell from Drake and Josh. And that episode is part of why I even added this predator behavior stuff. Because I thought that the stuff that they were going into is stuff that parents just automatically noticed, but evidently it wasn't. So I was like, I'm going to add this so that we can go over this. But if you can go and get access and watch that episode, You can see the red flags. You can see where Drake was failed by both sides of the parents, and you can see where he was just failed by society in general because the guy was a good guy, right? So I highly recommend that. Go through it and just yourself be like, all right, this is a red flag. What went wrong? How was he failed? All this stuff. So that you can just learn for yourself, right? Because I just recommend it. Because typically if I had time, I was going to, do this whole thing where I like told the whole story and I was going to do a conversation thing like, where are the red flags? We don't have time for that because we got to eat pizza. So I'm going to go into grooming in the human trafficking one. So I'm going to go through these slides really quick. So I'm going to do that on the second one. So I'll go through this. Here's the one that you're going to be interested in. So I'll do grooming in the next one. I won't forget it. So apps that have been a problem in the past. Here are the apps that you've probably seen on Facebook. Yes. So I don't recommend Roblox. So I would try to get her, if she's interested in Roblox, I'd try to get her into Minecraft because Minecraft doesn't have proximity chat. Roblox does. So the difference in that is so on Roblox, when they're playing the game, if they get close to another player, they can then talk to them. And then what happens is the talking moves on to a messaging platform. And then it gets where it's not supposed to be. Minecraft doesn't have a proximity chat. And also on Minecraft, you can set it where the world that they're playing in is just them. Other people aren't allowed. So without an invite. So they can invite their friends or whatever, but they can't, random people can't get in. So I would recommend that. Roblox, so the case I mentioned earlier, the 12-year-old that I'm working on, I'm going to be working on once I get home, she met the guy on Roblox. So I would not recommend Roblox. At all. I know kids love it. I get it. Or actually, I don't get it because I play video games, and I don't think Roblox is a good video game, but kids like it. I would try to get her into Minecraft for sure, which would be the safer one, and it's like Roblox. So that's what I would go for. So you've probably, I'm not going to go through every one of these. You've probably seen these on some kind of list on Facebook before. Yes. So Discord is okay if you're using it in the correct manner. But there are communities on Discord that will randomly add children or will send an invite to a child, and if they accept it, they get into this community. It's just pornography, nudes, and all that stuff. So you got to watch out for that stuff. But Minecraft, the reason they would need Discord is if, for instance, if your son has a Xbox and the other person has a PlayStation, they can't talk to each other. But what they can do, if you're instead of Discord, so if they're on the computer, it's hard to do it that way, but they can get the PlayStation app and they can make an account on the PlayStation app, and then they can talk to each other securely through that. And they're right, or they can get some kind of an app other than Discord. Besides that, I don't have one that I can necessarily recommend off the top of my head right now. But that might be something I need to add to this. But I would recommend, or even just telling them to talk, if they have a phone that can make phone calls, just talk on the phone, better than Discord. Like I said, if they're using it in how you're supposed to use it, it's fine. But just be wary of that and monitor it. So we all know Snapchat, Instagram. Off of these two, if you want to know the top two that our team, the Shepherds, sees kids getting groomed on, the top two that we deal with are Instagram and Discord. We see kids all the time getting groomed on Instagram and Discord. Instagram is by far number one, but then Discord is the second one. So just to go quickly through so you know things like this. So Yik Yak is a location-based chatting platform. Y'all can see why that would be a danger to a child, because you are getting on it and you are talking to people within your proximity, within a mile or whatever, within 5 miles, whatever they set it to. And obviously, if anybody worth their snuff with computers, they can get your child's address through that. TikTok. So Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, you can get a lot of nudes, a lot of pornography stuff on there. Omegle is a anonymous chatting platform, and it's video. Typically what you get in there is a lot of predators, because you'll talk to somebody and then you'll hit next and it'll give you someone random. And what you'll see is a lot of predators revealing themselves to children, because you don't know what's next. And then you're looking at the screen and like there it is, type thing. So it's very unfortunate. Hoop is a Snapchat Tinder for kids. If y'all know what Tinder is, the swiping left. So Tinder is a dating app. Well, really a hookup app. But you swipe right for somebody you like, and you swipe left for somebody you don't like, and you're trying to match with people. So this one is a Snapchat based for kids. And they say, they've been in court multiple times, but they say, oh, well, adults can't get on it. But, well, if adults... they can get on anything. All you got to do is say that you're young. You see somebody's Snapchat profile, you see a picture of the kid, and you swipe right, and then you get their Snapchat name, and then you message them. So I wouldn't recommend it. So Kik is a anonymous messaging platform. You can have whatever name you want on there. It also has a lot of sexual material. Discord. I kind of explained that community platform with tons and tons and tons and tons of sexual material. But like I said, if your kid's using it for what it's meant for, they're not going to see that stuff. But if they're on it, they're at a higher risk of seeing it, because it is on there. Vault apps. Anybody know what a Vault app is? So a Vault app is an app that is made to look like some other app that regularly comes on a phone. So if you're on iPhone, you know what the calculator app looks like. Or the Android, if you know what the calculator, or the Photos app, you know what it looks like. These Vault apps are apps that you download that look exactly like that, but when you click on it, it asks you for a passcode, and your kid can hide videos, your kid can hide pictures, your kid can hide whatever they want in that app. So if you're checking your kids' phones every now and then, just click on the calculator, click on the photo, click on those things that look normal, just to see. If it asks you for a passcode, we got something going on. Right? Because it typically doesn't. Yarn. Oh, yeah, and there's another one. I have not figured out the new app, because every time an app gets taken down, there's going to be inevitably a new one. But there used to be an app called Poof. And it was like a Vault app, but it was more in-depth than the Vault app, in the fact that it would have a passcode set, a quick passcode, or you could do when the iPhones did the thumbprint thing, you could do it with that. But where you take this app and you download it, it's called Poof, you set a passcode and you attach all these apps, whatever you want, to that. Messages, whatever it is, you attach it to that app. Soon as you bust up in the room and you're like, give me your phone, all they got to do is hit that app, quick passcode, and everything they attach to that, poof, gone. For 30 minutes. And then it comes back. So I have not figured out what the new app for that is, and when I do, it'll be on here, but obviously it's hard to find. So we're looking, just haven't found it. And then Yarn is an app that you like with bedtime stories on it for kids, or just regular book stories. But all of a sudden, your kid will be swiping on the book or whatever, and sexual image. So I don't recommend that. So here's some new stuff. Is the pizza here, Rachel? Okay, sweet. I'm concerned about pizza, so I'm going to go through these really quickly. So this is the new stuff that I'm dealing with right now. So these are some cases I'm dealing with at this moment, right now, with kids. One of them's 14 years old in Alabama, and she has been talking with a 30-something-year-old male on Google Docs. Because nobody checks Google Docs, right? And so so Google Docs and Google Sheets. Your kid, does anybody's kids have a school-issued computer or an iPad or something or whatever? So those things are typically locked down. You can't even get on YouTube sometimes with some of those, right? Anything but school. But Google Docs and Google Sheets is school. So the problem is they will have somebody send them, because Google Docs, you can access it on anything. Somebody will send them a Google Doc that has links to pornography in it. And if you click it in Google Sheets or Google Docs, it will open it up without anything knowing. If you have a monitoring app, it won't pick it up. The school computers won't pick it up, and they will be able to watch whatever they want through Google Docs or Google Sheets. That is brand new to me. I just had that pop up 3 weeks ago. And we're working on that right now to try and figure out, okay, who was your daughter talking to? Because we don't know. We're trying to figure it out. And it was somebody she had met, like some YouTuber or whatever. But big thing that you're dealing with now, deep fake nudes, deep fake pornography, AI, yes. I've not, but I would put it through the ringer. I mean, research it as high as you can, and I'll even look into it. But no, that's one that's new to me. But pretty much any AI image thing, if you know how to prompt it, right? If you know how to ask the right questions to get it to do things, you can take, theoretically, anybody's picture in the whole entire world, and you can put it into that thing, and you can make them nude or in doing stuff in a video or whatever, right? So honestly, I used to recommend this as like, hey, don't put pictures of your kids out on Facebook. But now that this stuff is happening, like, I highly recommend either don't put pictures of your kids out on the internet, or go into your Facebook and there's a thing where you can go and you can say, only these people can see my post, your family or whoever, and make sure that everybody doesn't see it. Make it private. And that's what I would recommend, because you never know, unfortunately, with this stuff, what somebody's going to do with that picture. Yeah, and so and also I don't go heavy into this, but there's a pamphlet back there on sextortion for parents. Sextortion is a big issue in the South right now, especially in Tennessee, for whatever reason. Big issue, where people are coercing and manipulating a young female to send them a nude, and then they are using that nude to be like, send me more, or I'm telling your parents, send me more, or send me money, or I'm posting this online, or whatever it is. They are using it to manipulate your kid, to extort things from your kid. And it is, if your kid ever gets in that situation, that's why that open line of conversation, right? If anybody ever tells you to do something like this, come talk to me. You need to catch that quick. Because there have been kids that have taken their lives for this stuff. There was one in about 45 minutes from my house not too long ago. So catch it quick, and as soon as you realize somebody's doing this to your kid, call the cops. No hesitation, and call me. I can help. So. Or at least I can help figure out who it is. I can't help in the legal side of it. But so why are we talking about this? Go through this quick. There's something called CSAM. It's child sexual abuse material. So I'll go into some things when we're talking about trafficking, but there's a couple different legal terms and whatever you call that. I don't remember what you call that when something's abbreviated. Can someone help me on that? Acronym? Yeah, right. So CSAM, and then you have CSEC, which is a commercially sexually exploited child. So CSAM, child sexual abuse material, includes nudes, pornography, all this stuff, right? You see people getting arrested for things like this legally when they're in court. This is what it would be called, is CSAM. In 2004, there were 450,000 files of CSAM on the internet. That's what it was believed to be. Obviously, you got the dark web, so there's stuff that you can't track. But 450,000 files in 2004, and the internet wasn't like, crazy good back then, right? But in just an 18-year span, 18 years, right? Typically, you want your kid moving out and doing things, going to college, 18 years. Sometimes they stay in your house till they're 30 or whatever now. But 18-year span of a child from 2004 to 2022, look at that. That's why we do this. 87 million files of CSAM on the internet just 2 years ago. It's probably more now. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate this is the world we live in. But at the same time, I believe God has called me to do this so that we can start to counteract this and fight this. So y'all understand that. I've talked about that. We've got to protect our kids. Speak up for your kids. Do the things that feel awkward. talk with your kids, create a line of conversation. If someone in your house has ever received CSAM, if somebody who's an adult sends a nude to your child, police, 911, immediately. Don't wait. Immediately. Get it started, right? And then, like I said, I can help you figure out who it is, because a lot of times to do a legal action, you have to know exactly who it is. And if I can help you know who it is, then boom, let's get them in jail. So anybody under the age of 18 receiving something from somebody over the age of 18, and technically if your child sends a nude, they are then creating CSAM. But they would, if they've been asked by an adult to send it, the adult's liable, but your child's not, if that makes any sense. They're not going to be like tried or anything. So a lot of people get scared and they're like, oh, I don't want my kid going to juvie or whatever. They're not, right? They're going to have to go to court and they're going to have to do these things. But you'd rather do that than the relationship continuing. So talk to your child. Do random checks. That's the big one. Don't tell your kid that every Friday at 3 p.m. you're taking their phone and checking it. Because any kid who has any kind of brain is going to know to remove the stuff and then put it back, right? So don't do random checks. Bust up in there. They are your kid. They are your grandkid. If you care about them, you love them, and you want them to be safe in this internet world, do the hard stuff. That's all I can recommend, is do the hard stuff. And then anything that gives your kid access to the internet is a danger to them. If you're giving your kid unbridled access to the world, it's reciprocal. They have access to them. So you don't want to do that. Do your research. Fight for your children. I already said that. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to leave this up while you're eating so that you can write this down. But I will go into the rest of this in the next one so that we can eat and do all that. So any questions before we do that? Good to go. All right. Do you want me to pray, or do you want to pray?
You can pray.
Okay. So I'm going to pray, and then we're going to eat some, is that Papa John's? Okay. Papa John's pizza. All right. Father, I thank you for this day, and Father, I thank you for these parents and grandparents and whoever they may be in this room that are here and who are willing to learn and who are willing to fight for children, Father, fight for their rights, Father, and fight for their safety and fight for their innocence, Lord. I ask that you would bless this food to our bodies and that you would bless the rest of this time that we are spending together. In Jesus' name, amen.